Hi everyone. Hi. So I did my book on Lone Survivor. See, Marcus Luttrell, Patrick Robinson. It's a great book. If you've never dealt with military stuff, this is a very good book to read. It kind of gives you a really good insight on what a soldier goes through in real war activities. So let's get started. Okay, so the book is based off of Marcus Luttrell's experience with his teammates. There were four of them, including Marcus. Next was Lieutenant Michael Murphy. He was the team leader. We have Petty Officer Second Class Matthew Axelson and Petty Officer Second Class Danny Deets. They were trying to do surveillance in a known terrorist organization in the Afghan mountains. They were to try to locate this one terrorist and his team and relay the information back to their command staff, or if they could even capture him, they could do that as well. So their target was Ahmad Shah. I'm not really sure if that's how you say that. He was an anti-coalition militia leader and known terrorist. He led the group called the Mountain Tigers, and they were given their name because they could go out into these torrential mountainous terrain and just do anything. I mean, they like leaped over rocks like gazelles. It was crazy. He was not necessarily Taliban, but they associated with the Taliban. If you watch the movie, which I wouldn't recommend, I would recommend reading the book because they are totally different. In the movie, they will tell you that he was responsible for killing American service members, but that was never ever true. He was just a target of interest to the U.S. military defense at the time. So during the operation, the team gets set up and they get comfortable. They have to make a couple different moves, and you're supposed to get on your comms each time. During all of this, they got to their target location. It was in the Hindu Kush Mountains, and everything was fine for the most part. But they were spotted by some local goat farmers. They had land in that area, and the goat farmers were kind of taken hostage by the team for a moment while they decided what to do with them. This is a very pivotal moment in the book because this is a make or break moment. They really do fight with their morals and their military standpoints on what to do in this situation. They had a young boy, maybe a teenager, and then two grown men, and they could tell that maybe they weren't Taliban, but they did not like Americans for whatever reason. Even though they, were not injured or hurt or anything by them, they still hated Americans. And to the team, that was something that they had to really think about what they were going to do. Were they going to risk their own lives and let them go, or were they going to make the military decision to kill them and go on about their business when it comes to trying to get this terrorist off, the map in the first place? In the end, they do decide to let all three men go. And this was the wrong decision at this point. Morally, yes, they made the right decision because many people that do not do anything with the military, they don't know what kind of decisions are needed to be made in order to survive in war times, would have a real issue with the other choice that they would have had to make. And they made that based off of circumstances where the media has destroyed the lives of military service members when they've had to make a hard choice and things like that. Marcus says something in the book that really stuck with me and made me sad. And I'm not going to say the first word, but it's pretty vulgar. But on page 206, he calls himself an effing liberal, a half-assed, no-logic nitwit, all heart, no brain with the judgment of a jackrabbit. He calls himself that because he, in the end, made the final decision that they were going to let these men go. He was not the team leader, but even the team leader struggled with making that decision. And as a human being in a wartime situation like that, although I've never been in the military, putting myself in that situation when I was reading the book, I believe that I would have a very, very, very hard time making that decision, as well as I believe all service members do. So, morally, they did make the right decision, but at the end of the day, this decision cost his three other team members their lives. So, about an hour after they let the goat farmers go, they begin to get attacked. They just keep coming and coming and coming. These mountain tiger men, they did locate them. They were taking gunfire, just the four of them against, 30, 40, 50 men. They had rocket launchers, they had grenades, they were severely outnumbered. To the point where these men had to throw themselves off of a mountain, not once, not twice, but 3 times, in order to get into a position where they thought they would be safe, which they never were. This is a great part of the book because it really does go into detail of what a fire battle is. So, I mean, if you've never dealt with military stuff before, I think this would be a really good book to read because it does give you a real world view of what our service men and women really do go through during battle. Danny Dietz was the first to be killed in action. After he was, they had already lost their main comms, but after throwing themselves off the last mountain range, Matthew Murphy, the team leader, he decided to use the phone that they weren't supposed to use. It gives away their exact location to anyone around, including the enemy, but he needed help. Axelson was on his way to death as well, and Marcus Luttrell was obviously severely wounded, and Murphy was severely wounded, but he decided, as a team leader that he was, to go out into an open range area where there were no really trees, and he got his phone and he called for help. During this, he was shot. He dropped the phone. He was able to pick it back up. He finished his call, and he got back in the fight. He went back into the woods and fought with Marcus and Matthew, and they fought until Axelson died and Murphy died. The reason why Marcus Luttrell was able to get out of the fight was because he was blown up by a grenade. That's not a good reason, but he was blown into a hole, which eventually saved his life because he was able to sit there until the mountain tigers were done fighting and looking for him, basically. However, during this, that call created a need for a tomahawk, or not tomahawk, a Chinook chopper, an MH-47 helicopter to go out and look for the team and try to save them. Unfortunately, during this, a rocket launcher was thrown at the helicopter, and all 16 service members on that chopper were killed in action. And Marcus had to hear and see the whole thing. He knew if he moved that the mountain tigers would also see him and he would also die. So he had no way of letting them know where he was. And, eventually they stopped looking for him. So at this point, Marcus gets up and tries his best with all his wounds to make it somewhere. He doesn't have any clothes on. He's been blown up. His clothes have been burnt off of him. He makes it to this village. And it's in the Astabad village. A man named Muhammad Gulab finds him. They live by this code of honor, the Bashtuwali, and it basically means that if any person comes to their village and they ask for help, that they must cater to them, whether it be a stranger or an enemy. And they do this. And Muhammad takes care of Marcus. He nurses him back to health as much as he can, while an elder villager goes out and attempts to get to the Marine base that's, relatively close by, so that they can save Marcus. During this time, he's tortured the Taliban mountain tiger people. They come and they go into the village and they try to take Marcus, but the villagers literally fight them off. They fight him off in order to save his life, and because of this, for many years, they were tortured by this group, and eventually, the U.S. was able to bring Muhammad Gulab and his family to the United States, where they now live to this day. And Marcus was, of course, the lone survivor and sole survivor of Operation Red Wing, and they did bring him back, and he was able to survive, and he is able to tell their message to this day, because not everyone gets to do that. I made this slide just so we could see the faces of the men that serve our country. Of course, women serve it too, but in this instance, it was just men from different operations, different teams, different branches of the military, Navy, Army, Marine, everything. Here are their names listed, and I hope all of you will take time to get this book and really read it, especially if you've never been in the military, or you don't do any police services here domestically. Something that would really give you a sense of what our military members go through.